advisory at 6:04 p.m. And the first order of business is, after calling it to the order, is a roll call. So I will please acknowledge if you are here. Ms. Cece.
Present.
Mr. DiLorenzo is here. Ms. Gibbs.
Here.
Mr. Goodwin, we know, has told us he's not attending this evening. Ms. Prop.
Here.
Ms. Remsen. We know she had indicated she is not here. And Ms. Penn Williams also will not be attending this evening. We have Stuart, our Democratic Registrar, and we have Sam and Preeti from ARC Bridge. So thank you, everybody. And our next order of business would be to approve the minutes. I need somebody to motion that and somebody to second that.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Great,
I'll second.
great. So we have moved on to the minutes. So for our regular meeting, the first thing I would like to do is welcome anybody that is participating publicly. And if there is an opportunity for you to comment on what we are doing, we will try to provide you a time to do that within our conversation. And if you would kindly raise your hand so that we can determine moving forward with that. So the next thing we want to do, and I'm hoping that Preeti and Sam can kind of help facilitate this, is go through the options that you were kind enough to provide to us. And the committee, I would like the committee to be able to kind of have a discussion about the different options. Preeti, you were pretty, within your presentation, I think you were very thorough in giving us some information, but let's talk about the pros and cons of each one of those options. And then the reappointment committee can move forward with some decision making.
Through the chair.
Hey, Ken, before you do that, I think that Telesco Secretarial Services, their hand is raised. I don't know. It's because
sorry.
I don't think we voted on the minutes, maybe, or
Yes, that's what I was about to tell you. You need to take the vote. You
Great.
moved it and
we
put
made
a
the
second.
motion, but we didn't actually vote. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Great. So all in favor of accepting the minutes from last
Aye.
meeting, say aye.
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 Opposed? Seeing there are no opposed, the minutes are accepted. Thank you. So I need IT to put up those options, or Preeti and Sam can put those up. I'd appreciate that so we can speak to those.
I can share them.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right, so here are the options. So option one, we created option one, and there were two changes that we made. One was this change over here, and the other one was this one. If you remember, if you recall, that when we did our initial analysis, we found that one of the districts, and you can see the district A had the most population and C had the least. So in order to balance things out, we did this. We took this area and we took this area, and we were able to balance the maximum deviation. That was good. But then the red lines that you see, those are your taxing districts. And this particular area is splitting a taxing district. And that is something that is based on the charter, we do not want to do that. So that was option one. And if you look at the pros and cons, it follows the population equality. Maximum deviation, the norm is to have it under 10%, and this had it at 2.91%. And the pros is that it is the lowest in all three options, okay? So the districts are compact and contiguous. Since we use census blocks and we use the census redistricting data to build the districts. The minorities are fairly represented. In District B, we have over 50% Hispanic majority. And in District A, we say it is an opportunity minority district because we have Hispanics as well as non-Hispanic Black population. So that is greater than 50%. So we call it an opportunity minority district. Then the other advantage is that we did not introduce too many changes, and we kept your current boundaries as we did not change them much other than the two changes. Then we also went and we looked at where your city officials live, as well as where your Bureau of Board of Education officials. So no council or board education official is affected. So those are the good things, the pros, and the cons. Like I told you, District A is splitting a taxing district. And then this is when we use census blocks, there are some splits because we are trying to follow the block boundaries. So if you go back and you look at it, and one of them is, and I'm going to show you in the legend, that they are county officials, and the green ones are your Board of Education officials. So that was option one. Now in option two, we made only one change. And as you can see that this area, we took away from District A and we put it in District C. So this area, our maximum deviation was now reduced to 4.78%, so which is still under 10%. And you can see how well the districts are almost as close as possible. So of course, District E could take a little bit more, and you can see District C looks good. So we did make minor changes and we were able to achieve that. So now let's look at the next slide where we are talking about the pros and cons. So pretty much like we said for option one, maximum deviation should be under 10%. And here it is 4.78. The districts are compact and contiguous. We have used census blocks and redistricting data to build the districts. Fair representation of minorities. So District B is still over 50% Hispanic. And District A is once again an opportunity district for minority. Once again, there were not too many changes, one change. And here, no council member is affected. But there is a member who lives in the area of suggested change, but she's at large, so it does not matter. And here, District A once again splits a taxing district. And then there are some splits which are due to block boundaries because we are using block boundaries. So here is option 3. And in option 3, we have the maximum deviation at 3.92%. you can see that this is the ideal population or the optimum population. And you can see how the districts are quite close to it. And District C could have taken a little bit more. B could have, but it's within our threshold, so we are okay there. So now if you look at the pros and cons, once again, we are within the maximum deviation threshold of 10%. The districts are compact and contiguous. And of course, it uses census blocks and redistricting data. And District B is once again over 50% Hispanic, and District A is an opportunity minority district. So no council or board of education official is affected. And here we have no new splits of taxing districts.
Can you go back and show the changes that you made, the 3 changes?
Sure. The changes are over here. So we are taking, the idea is to take away from District A, right? So we did not touch this area like we had done in the other options. We took a little piece here from District A and assigned it to E. And then we took some area from E, which was once again based on the treasurer's plan. So we took that and we put it to District D, and we took this little area from A and gave it to D. And then in turn, what D did was gave it to C because C needed it. And as you can see, no official lives in the areas that we are trying to change. And so these are the areas. Once again, we have tried to keep the current districts and introducing very small changes. And of course, there are some splits due to block boundaries, but we do need to use the block boundaries. So now we look at the registrar's proposal. And in his proposal, there are minimal changes. And what he is doing is following. So we'll go look at his proposal. So this one we included in our Plan C, where we took this school, middle school, which happens to be a polling place for District D. We put it in D. And then we looked at these areas, but because of the blocks and because they were not aligning, we did not use that, and we pretty much did not use this. But let's look at his proposal, the pros and cons. So the pros are that it follows the taxing districts. And the cons are that it's drawn on a paper copy. So it's based on estimated voter data, and we are unable to use census blocks or census 2020 data, and we cannot recreate it using the census geography. So these are the 4 options that you have. And what we recommend is the third option, option 3, because it does include suggestions from the registrar's plan and does not introduce any new splits, and no official is affected. So that is what we are recommending. But if you have any suggestions, or if you would like to say, what can I try to move this instead of this, then we are open to that.
Hey, can you put option 3 up on the screen for a minute again, please?
The option 3?
Yes, please.
So we are looking at change 1, this little area. We are looking at change 2, 3, and then 4.
Do you have a blow up of what you just named as change two? I can't figure out what you've taken exactly.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll stop sharing this and I'll open the plan where you can see the street names, etc. So let me stop this. And
Thanks, Preeti.
you're welcome. Just bear with me for a minute. I'm going to share my screen. All right, so what we can do is we can zoom in here. And we can actually, I forgot to mention that there is this change as well. Let me turn on the streets so you can see that better.
No, I know those. I want to up higher up because I want to know what effect it has and what that does to Kendall School, which is our voting district for the rest of that what is now A3 there.
Okay, so
I
am
believe
I-
that if I'm right, that Kendall School then is just south of Philo. Well, I know it's south of Philo. Your line stays north of Philo.
yeah, this
Okay,
is
so
Kendall
it
School.
keeps it in, it would keep it in A3, otherwise I wouldn't have a possible polling place in there. But you've left it in what was A3. So that's the effect of that's all I really had in the question was that. Now you left it in there. If you'd taken it out, you see, I wouldn't have any place I could have them vote. But they can vote where they are. The people remaining in that district would vote where they have been all along.
Mm-hmm. I think what we did was we looked at the polling places and we wanted to make sure that we would not affect them. So I think, so these are the polling
Oh,
places.
the line is Philo, so as long as your little piece there is north of Philo and I guess south of or excuse me, west of Satcham, Chester and Bow in there, that's not a
Yeah,
problem for the school being where in the area it now is.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So that actually brings me, are we open just for discussion now, Ken, or?
If Preeti is done, yes, I would say let's
Okay.
open it for discussion.
Yeah, and I think we probably need this map left up here because we see the streets and the voting sites that exist today. And I'm happy you brought this up too, Preeti, because when I had originally asked for your interpretation of the pros and cons for each of the options, I had asked for a breakdown of the pros and cons by different stakeholder groups. I know what you did, that you did your analysis because you have to comply with what the ordinance was looking to achieve. But I was hoping to see, at least for three of the groups, to see the pros and cons. And the groups being the pros and cons of each of these for the voters. And in particular, it'd be what Stuart was just talking about. So would someone actually then either be changing their polling site and would, or, you know, could it be closer or further from their home? I guess would be the types of pros and cons I'd want to look at. And then the other pros and cons would be from the registrar of voters point of view. And I think Stuart did a good job of articulating that at the past two meetings. But then I don't know that we got to the point where we're talking about any impact on the town clerk, because of ballots and things like that. So I don't know if there's any pros or cons, or if that's completely irrelevant in what you're suggesting here. And then the other one was the pros and cons for the council and BOE, but I think, that was a moot point. So,
Um,
so if we just go back and we look at this from the voter's point of view, did you see any particular, or can you identify any particular pros or cons from the voting population point of view?
Well, what we did was we looked at each district and looked at all possible polling places. And we tried to not change them, not move them, other than this one, this particular school, which we found is actually a polling place for District D. So we said, why not put it in that? Other than that, we have not impacted any of the polling places. They would remain. So people would still be able to, like the registrar's office could still be using the same polling places as they are currently.
And so that would apply to where there's a split, where they might have to be a different ballot for the taxing district?
The
Or is that-
taxing district remains pretty much as it is, I believe, looking at it here at the scale.
Okay, okay.
So, it would not it would not force us to spend the money of an added precinct.
Good.
I mean,
Okay, got it.
moving
So-
West Rocks and, excuse me, Pona School into the proper district is a plus, obviously. And
Okay.
otherwise, they seem to be, just sort of compensating E for pieces they're taking away, and, those pieces don't affect, some people obviously would be voting at, Fox Run instead of, Kendall, and but any change you make would be like that. So that's, they look pretty minor. And I guess, what is it, the people above Murray Street and Newtown Avenue there are probably closer, perhaps to Nathan Hale than they previously were at West Rocks. But that's what you take how you have to balance the sizes. And it's a decent looking piece. I mean, with reasonable boundaries of Murray and Newtown, not jagged all over the place, but major streets. And look, their option, I think it was 2, but the one where they took a piece out of following the East Avenue and everything east of
Yeah.
that. If it weren't for the taxing districts, that would be an excellent
Yeah,
choice. And I'd like to say one thing about that. I think maybe they want to look at the taxing districts and see if either their boundaries could be adjusted to follow the streets, making something a little more possible administratively, or we could run their elections separately, in which case the council districts would make sense. Because, personally, and from an administrative point of view, I like nice, clean division lines between the districts that follow big streets. You don't really object to going to a different polling place than the guy across a 4-lane street from you. But on a little back alley, or a neighbor with something dividing it, you want to know why you go somewhere else. That might be your ride. Excuse me, my voice after all these weeks is giving out. So that would make other options viable, and something along those lines. So that would work. I wish it weren't for the taxing districts. We'd love to have that off the table. It's that crazy situation, but they are municipalities and they are kind of created by special act, and only the legislature can change their boundaries. Although I chatted with Metnick today, and he said that they have some ability to do something in their own charters. So that could be looked into. Unfortunately, none of that could help you until it either happens or you got something from him about what might be possible. That's out of my range. if I could add just one kind of thing, I've been characterized as a Democratic registrar, and of course I am the Democratic registrar, but if I've said anything that seemed to be democratically political, I apologize. I have no intention of doing that. I only wish to comment on what it would do to election administration. You know, do we have nice polling places? Can people vote near home and all those kinds of things? And to avoid adding a lot of extra places where small little districts where we would have to open up a polling place and pay extra people and have equipment we don't have, which would obviously be a detriment. Now, I have no objection to the Republicans putting somebody on here. It seems perfectly sensible. Maybe they have some useful ideas, or there's no problem there. But again, East Avenue would be a lovely dividing line were not for the taxing districts that would affect have everything affected, and you'll never be able to clean up the lines of the districts to follow census blocks until you take them off the table, because they're all over the map in Rowayton, in South Norwalk too. And so no matter what you did by keeping some or doing others, you still would have lines that didn't follow the census blocks. I have one question. Did anyone at Arkbridge, I made estimates, but any of those estimates seem reasonable based on what you have? I mean, do they seem like plausible guesses? After all, we're not trying to hit to the last single voter change.
What we did was, we could not follow the block boundaries. Believe me, we did try to recreate your plan, but then
No, you can't possibly do it without breaking census blocks. I completely agree with that point.
yeah,
Unfortunately, we're stuck with that now. But if you're looking at this as an interim kind of thing, as long as you don't do that, maybe they could resolve the taxing district issues. And of course, there'll be another census in 7 or 8 years, whenever it exactly is. And well, 6 years, and then about 7 or 8 before it gets to the to this level, and maybe by then, or even sooner.
yeah.
So that's really all I have to say.
I invite the rest of the committee and or the public, if they would like to comment on the options, that would be the time to do so. Diane, you've given us some input on your thought processes. If there's anybody else that would like to add a point. Nobody is raising their hands or wanting to speak, so I will.
We have an Elsa O.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
We have an Elsa O. You want me to unmute her?
Yeah, thank you. Who would that be?
Thank you.
Also,
Hello,
Obachowski, probably.
This is
Hi, Elsa.
This is Elsa Peterson Obachowski. So I'm glad to see that it sounds like the recommendation is option 3. When you were talking about that no elected officials would be affected, I happen to be an elected official. I am the chair of the Board of Commissioners of the First Taxing District. And I live on the eastern side of East Avenue, which is shown on your map as State Route 53. So if you chose, I believe it is option 2, I would be written out of my district.
That's not true, Elsa. Your taxing
No.
district line doesn't change that way. You would simply be voting in District C instead of A, but you would still be in the taxing district and you would still be a commissioner.
Okay,
Yes.
that was a big question in my mind. I had not heard anybody address that question, whether if the common council district changed, if the taxing district boundary would remain, because the city charter says that that the first taxing district is districts A1 and A2. So if you move the boundary of District A1 and it still says that the first taxing district is District A1 and A2, then the opposite of what Stuart just said would occur. But if you're saying that you could change the wording in the city charter, so it would say something like that portion of District A1 that used to be, or I don't know how you would word it.
I don't believe the charter could change the taxing district line. I think that would take the state, would take action by the state. They're created by a special act of the legislature
Right,
long ago before there were streets or all the streets. So
right. That's my understanding too.
that's my understanding, and
No,
would be-
that,
yes, based on everything I know in 16 years in the job.
yes, that concurs with my understanding. But if the city charter wording did not change, then the city charter wording would say that the first taxing district is districts A1 and A2, and yet there would actually be a portion of A1 that would now be in District C.
Yes, they probably would have to change the wording, but they don't have the power to change the taxing district. If they had the power to change the taxing district lines in the city charter, they could just change them and solve all these problems. Maybe not to the point to the advantage of your taxing district, but I don't think they can do that. But it's a worthy question. Mednick probably should be consulted eventually.
Now so my understanding is the same as yours, that the city of Norwalk all by itself doesn't have the authority to change the boundaries of the taxing districts. That,
Yeah, and I mean, I've been to law school. I was a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for a long time, but never in Connecticut, and I wouldn't be giving the opinion that would, a legal opinion on this. But there's a way to check it. But I don't think there's a problem. Easier to change the charter wording, which would make sense.
yeah, so anyway, I'm just I would like to weigh in on those 2 points. One is that I, as an elected official, I could potentially be affected. And secondly, that if you are recommending option 3, that is the one that I'm the most comfortable with. I guess I'm also sort of wondering about District A4. And I guess that,
It would remain the same, it would appear.
right. So I know that in what you had drawn, Stuart, that was different, but because of the census blocks, I guess that doesn't work.
Well, yeah, I would like to eliminate A4 if possible, just administratively, but it doesn't look like that's going to work because that has the same problem with these lines.
Yeah, understood.
So I'm
Thank you.
fine with not changing it. It's adding a district that I'm most concerned about, and even more about adding like 2 or 3 districts that we would somehow have to deal with.
Hey, Ken, can I ask you a question before Elsa jumps off?
Yeah, I was just thanking Elsa for her input. And yes, go ahead, please, Diane.
Thanks. Hi, Elsa, it's Diane. Nice to see you. So I may have misunderstood because I'm just a little bit confused. So were you saying that so that the charter definition for the first taxing district defines the taxing district as A1 and A2 versus just like geographic boundaries? Does it actually say A1 and A2 like
I believe it
corresponding?
does. Yeah, I believe it
Okay.
does.
Okay.
Something like
All right.
that in the previous charter, but I haven't looked at
Yeah.
the definitions in this charter specifically.
Yeah, I hadn't
We
realized
definitely
that.
could
So
see.
that, right, because then that would have an impact. So I think the third taxing district is strictly defined, geographic boundaries and not anything to do with necessarily, a C1 or C2 or anyway, thanks, Elsa. I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah, thanks, Diane.
Great. Is there any other input from anybody? I think we're at a point where the committee needs to determine our next steps. That would be for the committee to move forward on possible options. What we are waiting to do that officially is the revisions that were discussed at our last meeting need to be approved by both the ordinance committee and the common council. Common council doesn't meet until the first week of September. So as far as an official decision, we will be there, but hopefully the committee can meet one more time between now and then to get our thought processes. And by that council meeting, we should have a designee from the Republican Party. So we have the perspective of everybody in order to move forward. Does everybody understand that? So I hope I was clear with that.
Yes.
Okay. So I moved at 6:40 to adjourn our meeting for this evening. I need,
Were you gonna throw any dates out there as possibilities, Ken, or not until, those other items are resolved, you said?
if you as a committee would like to discuss the options right now, would like to do that, but I didn't know if everybody here was ready to do that. If you are, I would love to hear everybody's perspective on the options. Would you like me to go first? I prefer option 3, based on that it has the least effect on changes that could affect somebody like Elsa or anybody else. I think it fulfills what we need to do as a committee, and with the least amount of change. Anybody else? Jody, Kia, Diane?
I was just suggesting that we talk about, what the possible upcoming dates were. I didn't know if you were talking about like meeting again next week or the week after. So I was just trying to nail something down in my calendar,
Okay.
versus the options. But I'll just say for the record, I didn't really have a strong, opinion either way.
Okay.
Between the options, I understand the pros and cons of each, and I'll take it that the consultants would, and Stuart would say that there's no pros and cons that would impact the town clerk. I'm going to assume that at this point because nothing came up. So
I don't think there's anything that would affect well, it wouldn't affect his election function. What function of the town clerk would you?
I didn't know what the impact would be in terms of anything having to do with ballots or any of the processes that would have to be done for 2025. I just didn't want to speak because I know he's not a part of this committee or ex officio here either, and I didn't want for us to be charging ahead if it did. But I honestly, Stuart, I don't know enough about the role. I just want to make sure that if it's something we were supposed to be considering, that we are. If it's not, then
Just to be clear, the registrar's office runs the elections. The town clerk's role is the absentee ballots, but they're covering the same political boundaries, of course. So
okay.
And
Okay,
now there's other functions. I can't see dog licenses and things, deeds. I don't think they.
No, I'm just talking
The
about
property's your
ballots.
property, whatever district it's in.
No, I'm just talking about producing the ballots and the absentee function. So
Okay.
So Ken, I'm sorry again. I'm perpetually confused. I think here. So are we talking about throwing up some dates for when we're meeting again, or not until you hear back on the open items you just described?
I think we should, as a commission, have a meeting prior to the council's approval the first week of September. I am not available next Thursday, but if Sue is, you could do that. So I would recommend Thursday, the 29th of August. We can.
I can make that work.
Okay.
Next,
Well, I would not be
Sam-
available that night, but I don't know that that would be critical at this point.
Ken,
Yes, Sam.
we're not available next week.
I am
Wednesday.
not available next Thursday. Now, if we decide as a group to have it on a different evening, you know, we could do that. I'm just not available next Thursday.
We are not available the whole of next week.
All of next week.
Yes, all of it.
So that would mean the following week, the Thursday, the 29th would be viable for you?
That week is good.
Okay. So that helps us with our decision making here. We'll attempt to have a meeting on the 29th. We'll verify that with the city offices and hopefully we can get a little more information that we can provide publicly as far as the revisions that we've put through.
You want to make that a public hearing, or do you want to just have a committee meeting?
Before, until we have the revisions that have been voted on by the council and the ordinance committee, the public meeting doesn't, it's not gonna be, if they don't approve it, it's not gonna make sense. But as you were at our last meeting, so the items that are being addressed is some additional time period and the Republican designee. Those are the two main items that were revised. And so they need to vote, they need to put those through their committees, and then we can move forward.
Okay.
Okay? So we'll facilitate a meeting for Thursday, the 29th. It's 6 o'clock, hopefully work for everybody. If not, please communicate that to me or to Irene Dixon or to Esther Murillo. Okay? Great. So at 6:46, I move to adjourn our meeting. Can somebody?
I second that.
Great. Thank you, Kia. And everybody, thank you so much. I appreciate everybody's input. Have a nice
Thanks,
evening.
Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.